Do we have any Sederunt and Apologies?
Chairman, apologies from Councillors Brodie, Yen and Marshall, I believe. Yep. And Karen Paisley.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Wiper.
Oh, Councillor Wiper. Yes. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay, moving on to item 3. During all the discussions on Dumfries Learning Town, we've listened intently, and as Chair I am committed to ensuring that the development of options has been and will be informed and enhanced by the views of elected members, pupils, parent council representatives, teachers, union representatives and wider stakeholders. It is important to acknowledge what stage we have reached in the process and what further information is required before members can make a final decision on how to progress. This is about what is the best option for pupils in Dumfries and beyond. While I think we might agree that the original option 3 can be discounted, it has become increasingly obvious that the full detail of both option 1 and 2 to outline business case is what is required. As an education committee, we have a responsibility and a duty of care to ensure that the correct detail is progressed. It was the full intention of this committee to refer final decision to all 47 members at full council, and I believe it best at this time that this work continues to be undertaken by the Education Committee. Until recently, we have not received enough information, I believe, and we need to progress at this stage to outline business cases, and then after that we will then take it back to full council. I would ask that members today have a robust and constructive debate around the learning and teaching report and how we move forward. I have requested information from the project team about the shape of a business case and have included some of this in detail in recommendations which I would like to table. I feel that by tabling a very comprehensive motion at this stage in the meeting will hopefully assist in the debate we need to have today. It will give an opportunity for all members to contribute their views on what further detail is required, how we can positively work together for the long-term good of people in Dumfries and beyond. Since this information would have been prepared and signed off by another committee, even if a single preferred option had been identified, it is clear that this will not lead to any material delay. What we must do now as a committee is ensure that the fullest of information is requested on both options 1 and option 2 revised, and I would so move the following motion. I have copies of the motion, which I'm happy to distribute if members would like. Vice Chair. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair, and I've no problem with you. And every member will get a copy of that motion. Obviously, I've just written in a few words as well, you know, because obviously I had the courtesy to inform us prior to the meeting, and thanks very much, the group. Thank you for that. I've got to agree with you that, you know, there isn't even any sign of the basic information we councillors, and more importantly, the parents wanted to see within this report. The decision of the Education Committee in March was clear, but it's been completely ignored as far as we can see. We wanted impartial, factual business cases for the full council meeting in June, and we obviously don't have that or anything resembling a business case. We now have the officers with no authority telling parents that the decision in June will merely be a direction of travel and the business case won't happen until after we decide which option we want. That's in here. That's not what we agreed as councillors, and it's totally unacceptable that officers are simply making decisions to suit that agenda, whereas that decision was quite specific, you know, about how that business case being there, which isn't. I've got concerns over whether we'll actually get that impartial information that we actually asked for. The project, it's becoming increasingly an obsession to impose something. Well, that's a view. That's what's out there. That's a perception out there in the community of Dumfries, and we don't have the evidence that people want. Rather than genuine consultation process, you know, it's something that people feel rightly or wrongly. And we've always had an open mind about it. We haven't made a decision on it, and it's a free vote in our group. So we actually wanted that information, and we wanted to make informed decisions, which isn't actually out there. anyone that bothered attending these consultation meetings, you know, they came away with a clear impression, as I said, that it's a sales pitch, which is unfortunate, rather than a listening exercise. Now, we've got in front of us a whole new concept of 3 to 15 campuses being thrown into question out of the blue that no one had a clue what it actually meant in practice. If this concept is taken to its logical conclusion, it will cost millions more, and inevitably it will lead to closures of many existing primaries as we move forward. This is albeit, you know, it's in the long term that shared primary and secondary campuses. I want an assurance. My group, you know, we've talked about that as individuals, as ward council members. We want an assurance that any business case that we get will have the answers to the basic questions parents have asked on issues such as the transition, such as well as transport. Although I suspect there's no answers to a lot of these questions, but you know, the costings should be clear for any changes to schooling. Also, the transport interventions that will be needed and details about the 315 shared campus will actually mean in practice. I also want an assurance that we will have impartial information, not a skewed document, as there is no doubt the biggest complaint that we've had as individuals, parents and teachers, apart from having no answers, is the fact that information and answers they do receive, they've not been impartial. I've no issue with the delay because this matter is too important and we discussed that. It's too, but every day we delay, this is one of the concerns, to pursue an agenda. It's a particular agenda, it seems, is another day the schools in Dumfries are left in a dreadful state. Now, this is delaying for that. There needs to come a time when we start to make a decision based on what parents and the community actually want, rather than ducking and diving until we get what the council seems to want, or some people seem to want.
Thank you very much for that. I think that is why I wanted to take this approach today. I think we all acknowledge that not enough information is out there for members to make a full and wholesome decision. And that is why I believe that the motion, which I think we should distribute to members who don't have a copy, needs to be considered in the round. It is too important, it's too big a project. We're not delaying the timeline at all, because we would always have had to have worked up business plans anyway. But I think we as an education committee have to keep control of this project, drive it forward in a very positive form, ensure that both options are fully appraised, and make sure that all members and wider stakeholders, pupils, parents, have the information that's required so that we can make a decision into the future. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second the motion that's being circulated, although I hope that actually we won't, in fact, require to divide on it. It is, I think, very comprehensive and detailed, and I hope it would actually include the sort of points that Councillor Nicholas is actually driving at and talking about. I met members of the Increased Parent Forum 2 weeks ago, and I've been reflecting pretty hard on the nature of the decision that we are being asked to take. I suppose when we're looking at anything new, maybe consider things that we've done before which might have some degree of relevance. I thought, for example, about the decision we took on Dalbeattie, where we had options and we chose between options, and now, having chosen an option, we're working up the detailed work that needs to be done in order to take it to fruition. But of course, the difference there was that in Dalbeattie, we were essentially choosing between options which were already in existence in the authority in various different places. Now, while we do have some examples in the authority where some of the work that is possibly being looked at for one or other of your options is already taking place. I mean, I think, for example, senior phase transition in Dalry, for example, we are talking about a different scale, a different character of project altogether. For a start, very much bigger. Also reflect on timing. It would be fair to say that I think had we had the report from the Learning and Teaching Working Group, which I very much appreciate, and I'm making absolutely no criticism of the group for the hard work they've done in it, none whatever, had that appeared slightly earlier, I think it might be fair to say that the actual recommendations that we were originally looking at today might have reflected very much what's in the motion that the Chair and I have tabled, rather than the recommendations that we had. But as I say, make absolutely no criticism of the people who've been working on that group and clearly working very hard indeed. I think that we're all very keen, certainly the Vice Chair and I, very keen that we have ongoing involvement from all the members of the committee and the whole Dumfries community, because this is so big. And I hope that that's also reflected in the motion that we've tabled. I do know that it has been circulated already that there was advance notice. I mean, it is lengthy and comprehensive. If members wish a recess, I'm happy to move that so that we can discuss it. But equally, if members prefer, and I think might be a better option, we debate it and do so publicly and on the record. And with any luck, come to a consensus on it as a sensible way forward.
Councillor Lever?
Yeah, I fully sympathise with what's been said today. I mean, I was amazed when this education paper came out on Thursday, I think, when I first saw it. I mean, I was expecting an elephant, given all the consultation which had taken place, and what I got was a mouse, and a very puny mouse. That, you know, there was loads of information which had been requested during the course of all these meetings with parents and teachers, which weren't included in here. And I think a lot of them were feeling quite insulted the fact that they'd been promised the answers would be in this document, these documents which are going to initial education and full council this month, and it just wasn't there. And I mean, what happens in those instances that people choose to vote with their feet? You know, parents haven't got the information they need in terms of whichever option we come down to. They'll move out of the town in terms of their children, and more crucially, the staff. I mean, there was the IS survey, which isn't even mentioned within this document, which indicated that 85% of the staff who did returns said they would look for jobs outside of Dumfries. What we don't want is our most able teachers moving out of Dumfries. We want this to be a magnet to bring staff into the area rather than to drive them out. And that's what I think we need in terms of the ongoing debate now, is we need to fully flesh out what options are there, actually look at the advantages and the disadvantages. And that was the purpose of this meeting, was to look at the educational advantages of options 1 and 2. I personally wouldn't have been able to make a decision on the basis of this. I mean, Appendix 1, for example, it's badly written. It doesn't have any information. There are huge areas which are totally blank in terms of the staff concern. That shouldn't be the case at this stage in the game. So I very much welcome the fact that the chairs come forward with these additional recommendations, and I appreciate the fact that we were given advance notice of this, so we weren't going to this meeting cold. I think rather than possibly recessing, what might be useful to do is to actually go through this recommendation point by point to actually see what we're proposing in terms of the additional considerations within the outline business case. And I think actually the public out there, the parents out there, will be quite impressed by the fact that we realise we got this wrong in terms of the consultation. I mean, if you look at the returns in terms of the number of people who actually attended, parents and teachers attended the various briefings, it's obvious that we've been going about this the wrong way. So I think we recognise the fact that we hadn't done this properly. We go back, we look at the consultation again, we get people on board in terms of this. This is the only way in which this is going to work at the end of the day. And this is a massive decision which we're going to make in terms of whether Dumfries education in Dumfriesborough goes in the future, is by actually doing this properly. And we don't rush this through, we do it properly and involve everybody in this. And it's not a question of people going out or this education coming back and rubber stamping a decision which has already been made. We need to go properly through it. And I very much welcome it.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Lever. We have had a request for a recess. Do members feel we need to have a recess to look at the recommendations? I mean, my feeling was that it was important to table this at the beginning, because what we have in the report doesn't give wide enough debate what we actually want to get to. And I think that by tabling this at the start, it forms the debate and hopefully will allow us to construct where we need to be, by the end of the meeting. If that takes all day, that takes all day. My feeling is that if we don't want to recess, I think at this point it would be appropriate to bring the officers in to speak to the report as we would normally do, and then we'll sort of reopen the floor to members. Are we happy with that? Well, I'd like to thank Dougal Forbes and Linda McAlevey, who are over at the back. They've been our joint chairs on the Learning and Teaching Working Group. We also have Claire Renton and Lindsay Baker here to answer any questions on the report. Do you have anything further to add to the report?
Many thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak today. It's very welcome. Dr. Start. I just want to update you on the progress of Learning Town. Obviously welcome. Without repeating what's in the paper,
Sorry, can you just move the microphone a bit closer?
Tied to the cable. Is that better? Can everybody hear me now? So I don't want to go over what's detailed in the paper because I'm sure you've read that in a lot of detail. I will raise a few points and Lindsay and I will be happy to take questions afterwards. From the outset, I think it's really good to be important that the team has sought to complete this consultation in line with the national standards for community engagement. And as part of this, we set out to deliver 3 objectives. Those objectives were to provide access to information to stakeholders, to allow two-way dialogue through the forums that we've created, and to ultimately reach agreement and understanding in the brief to inform the scope of the project. With the time and resources available, we believe that we've made real progress in the first 2 points, but I think in line with the discussions that I've already presented in this forum, we acknowledge that we've not fully completed the 3rd objective, part of the consultation. We are in the process of completing the last stages of this consultation, and I think it's to be clear that while some of the events have concluded, as part of a full and robust consultation, as part of the guidelines, we need to issue a full report, which we'll be doing so it's fully auditable later in the month. We'll be undertaking a lessons learned review of how it's been conducted to make sure that informs the way forward. And most importantly, and I think this is where the stage we've got to, is we've got this wealth of information that's been fed back from stakeholders, which allows us to extract the key points going forward, measure any future options, and how this committee decides to go forward. It is essential, out of the experience that we've had with this, to take lessons learned, and it is essential for the key points of feedback that we've gleaned from the stakeholders, and that has been a wealth of information that gets fed in going forward to test the 2 options, and that is in line with best practice that we've regarded nationally. Based on this report and the Learning and Teaching report, which Linda and Dougal are going to present on after this, we would appreciate the opportunity to develop both options to outline business case in order to provide the specific details. It's very clear from the feedback from yourselves and the information required by key stakeholders, and to report back to elected members when we have that information through the business case. And again, we'll wait your direction on that. And fundamentally, keep focused that we want to deliver the best way forward for children and young people in Dumfries and Galloway. And happy to take questions on the consultation and the information presented.
Thank you very much. Lindsay, do you have anything further to add at this time? No? Well, I think we'll take this opportunity, if you don't mind, then to allow Dougal and Linda to come forward and give a little bit of an overview of the work that they've done through their work on the Learning and Teaching Working Group. And then I think once all the officers have spoken, we will open the floor up to members and we'll have a fair panel to answer any questions that are required to be answered. Thank you very much and welcome.
Oh, sorry. As a teacher, you're used to projecting your voice without the aid of technology, but we'll bow to technology. Good morning, everyone. Dougal and I would like to take the opportunity to put the Learning and Teaching Group's report in context, and also give you a little bit of background on who we are and the experiences that we have brought to this process so far. Between us, we're 60 years plus in education, and that was quite a scary thought when we added that up. But as head teachers, our combined service totals to over 40 years. In addition to our roles as head teachers, we've been involved in numerous local and national working groups, including job sizing, monitoring Macron hours, teacher training, mentoring of new head teachers, working in and with HMIE, and we've both actually, our first meeting was at LNCT, so we were members of the LNCT group a few years ago. So you could say we've actually got quite a few miles under the belt, you know. And it's probably with those experiences, together with the fact that we're not involved in any way with the borough management. So this gives us a degree of detachment from the process, impartiality, and I think we've been objective in how we've conducted ourselves throughout the process. I think that's probably the reason why the Staffing Models and Conditions of Service group asked us to chair these two groups. And subsequently, the membership of the groups was selected by the Staffing Models and Conditions of Services group. We didn't have an input on that. And that was quite a wide range of people too, coming from primary, secondary and additional support for learning sectors within the borough, all borough practitioners. We had a teacher of less than 5 years experience to those of us who are reaching the twilight maybe of our careers. And indeed, two of the members were EIS officials, with Timothy here today and John Dennis. So quite a variety and widespread group. It was evident right from the very offset that two groups working alongside each other and the consultation that would have to take place between those two groups would have been counterproductive to getting a report out to you on time. We started this process 3 months ago, and immediately Dougal and I saw that bringing the two groups together and with the agreement of the Staffing Models group, they were brought together, and that certainly has helped the process. At all times, we've reflected the views of the group and the emerging concerns, obviously, of the public consultations, where that was pertinent for learning and teaching. And you refer to the grids. That was our initial trawl of our membership in the group, and that's their views, and we used them throughout the process. So it wasn't an end product. Indeed, we were asked by the models, Staffing Models subgroup to consider the report of the EIS on option 1, and we were also, after our interim report in March, to look further at the possibility of the 3 to 15 agenda. So we were taking on board what was being said out there in the wider community, not just within our own group. Two of our group took away the option 1 appraisal from the EIS and fleshed it out further, using the information that we had gathered from our group. When we came to formulate our full report, we used the same format so that you did have continuity in the format we had. The option, the challenges were there, and the possibilities for opportunities for our young people. As chairs, we also had to look at other research, and you've got a note of our sources for that. Our report was formulated from our discussions and agreed at our last group meeting, and each member of the group had received our full report prior to that so that they were in a position to offer observations on it, and we could change things that they weren't happy with. We were not asked to make a recommendation or offer solutions to all the issues raised, but we've tried our best to address those that were related to the learning and teaching. We can't show you examples, as referred to earlier, of 3 to 15 schools, because Dumfries and Galloway will indeed be breaking new ground if that's the option that's approved at the end. Finally, Dougal and I have always had at the heart of everything that we've done throughout the process of the young people of Dumfries, and that has been at the heart of all of our considerations. And we felt that we did have a contribution to make within the group, and we hope that that's reflected. We're happy, obviously.
Thank you very much for that. I have 2 members at the moment. Are we quite happy to open the floor for questions, or did you want to look at the motion recommendation by recommendation? I feel at this particular time, the debate should shape where we end up with final recommendations, and I would be minded to just open the floor and have the debate, but I will take guidance from the committee. Councillor Nicholson.
Chair, as the motion has been put in front of us and it's been moved and seconded, that is part of our decision-making process now. And I think what Councillor Lever was saying earlier about, you know, just to give us an understanding of each bullet point, each one about what it actually means in real terms, might be helpful as well and contribute to the debate.
You'd like me to do that, presumably? Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, as I say, I wanted to form a basis for a very robust debate which everybody could feed into. The first recommendation is as per the papers, and it's simply to note the content of the Learning and Teaching Working Group's final report, which we will be doing. I think it's absolutely imperative at this stage that while it's contained within the Learning and Teaching report, and it does state that option 3 is not being progressed, we've never formally removed it from the table, and I think this is the time to put that one to bed and just get it completely off the table. As far as the timeline's concerned, at 2.3, we're all agreed we need to develop full outline business cases for both options 1 and 2. I have spoken to the project team, and this is what because they'd obviously done some preparatory work anyway, they were able to provide me with this. I think within the debate, what we need to assure is that as members, we have everything in there within the sort of outline business case to include section of bullet points, what we want to see, but also going forward into 2.4, it will give us an opportunity at the members' seminar on Monday to allow parent council representatives and the wider membership that don't sit on the education committee an opportunity to hear what the business plans and the remit of the business plans would look like, and for them to potentially feed into it. And again, it's just about keeping everything as open as possible and allowing everybody, you know, that we're able to actually feed into this process. We've got to get this right. You know, this is too important. It's a huge project. It's the future of education in the borough for the next potentially 30 to 50 years. And I think we need to have a really big discussion about what goes into the business cases, what we require from them, and then, as I say, at the seminar, we can widen that even further to the parent council representatives. And they do, you know, at least then they know that we are listening. You know, we're taking on board their concerns and we're moving forward in a very positive way. 2.5 was simply a recommendation that was contained within the papers anyway, to note the record of consultation, so that we have officers here to answer questions. I do have a couple of speakers. Is it on the back of that, Councillor?
Well, it is. Just to recognise, you know, that the seminar is going to take place on Monday afternoon at Cargan Bridge, but obviously a lot of parent councils aren't even going to be able to send representatives there. A lot of members aren't going to be there. So I think we need to distribute this document and make sure they do have a copy of that, irrespective of whether they're going to be there, and invite them to feed in to the debate.
I would absolutely agree with that. That would be a problem at all. Vice Chair, did you want to come in at this point? No, you're fine. Okay, I have Mr. Birrell.
Thank you, Chair. I couldn't help feeling that when it came to my mind that, of course, this committee was originally asked to take a decision about which option it preferred a year ago, before any of the consultation process that's gone on since occurred. And we're here a year later, still with a lot to do. I think teaching staff would be entirely in favour of developing full business cases for both the options as a basis for a properly informed decision. I feel that this perhaps is the first moment when I have felt that we were going to go forward into the creation of those business cases where option 1 and option 2 were being treated on an equal basis as proposed models for the future of education in Dumfries Borough. I have to say, as Linda has pointed out, I was a member of the Learning and Teaching group that produced this report, and I have to say that Linda and Dougal in particular did a phenomenal amount of work in a remarkably short amount of time to produce what that committee has produced. And at no stage was it suggested to them that their committee could or should be developing within the time available within the then existing timeline to the end of June, what could conceivably amount to a business case. That's something that has to come next. But the better informed members are, the community is, and teachers are to evaluate the options further in the way envisaged by this motion, absolutely the better, I'm sure, from the point of view of all teaching staff.
Thank you very much. Councillor McComb and then Councillors Diggle and Witt.
Thank you, Chair. Given the way these options have evolved over the last year, I can quite see the need for a detailed business case. I would stress the fact that there also needs to be a convincing academic case, because unless the parents in Dumfries are convinced that this improves the educational experience, there is no way they will back it. Now, I have one or two questions here with regard to the campus, the proposed campus arrangements. Firstly, would the 3 to 15 campuses involve the closure of existing primary schools? Secondly, what consideration has been given to the rural primary schools currently feeding into the Dumfries secondaries? Does this offer the prospect of a two-tier system for primary education as well as for secondary education in Dumfries and Galloway? And thirdly, how does the creation of the 3 to 15 campuses eliminate the transition from primary education to secondary education?
Thank you very much for that. I'll bring Diggle in a moment. I think a lot of the points that you just raised are the reason that we need to have much more detail in business plans, because I suspect that a lot of these questions can't even be answered today. And this is why I feel that we need to take this approach. But certainly on the educational model and merit, I think Diggle could use.
We can say a little bit about the academic side that you mentioned there. Wouldn't want to say anything about the way in which things might be configured within the borough. That's obviously a different department's job to have a look at facilities. But one of the most startling things that we found, I think, when we were researching was what they call break discontinuity at the current transition from primary 7 into secondary 1. And that seemed to be something that through schools throughout the United Kingdom that were being developed were eliminating, and that meant that the progress that youngsters of all abilities and interests were making was much greater because it wasn't interrupted at that stage of age 11. If you go with a 3 to 15 stage, the campus or the continuity of 3 to 15, your first transition point then becomes 15 as you move into something which is more specialised, more specific, and also, given the current arrangements in Scottish education, that's when you move into subject choice and certification. And the evidence we found would suggest that youngsters who are moving at age 15 have a greater maturity, a better focus on what they're doing, and there's all sorts of work that you can do, as currently happens with the transition from primary into secondary, in linking to establishments and having people who are teaching across the two, so that youngsters feel that there is a continuity in their learning, but they're going to somewhere where it's more businesslike and they're focusing on on careers and destinations more than they would be doing in the 3 to 15, where they're focusing on broad general education.
Does that therefore mean that in the 3 to 15 setup, there will be no change in the teaching methodology from primary 7 to S1?
I think there would be, because you would have both generalists, primary teacher, and specialist secondary teachers in the same institution, you'd be able to have them teaching across what are the current boundaries of primary and secondary, so that you could use primary methodology, but you would have secondary specialists delivering information and lessons using methodology that youngsters were accustomed to. So you'd be talking at a much better way of operating, because you would have people who would be exchanging ideas, you would have people moving between what are the current sectors. That's also something that could be worked on within option 1, but within the 3 to 15, obviously the gathering of people on the same campus makes it much easier to manage.
Thank you for that. Councillor Diggle?
Thank you, Chair. Just 3 points. So can I just clarify where the seminar is? Because I think I've seen one at Woodbank and one at Cargan Bridge. I'm not sure.
It's at Gareth, at Cargan Bridge, at Gareth. I can also say that the chair has been confirmed as Patrick Shearer, which I think is quite helpful. I'd put on the seminar invite that we hadn't established who the chair would be yet, but the former Chief Constable is going to chair the meeting.
Thanks for that. Second point, I welcome developing these detailed business cases. I just wanted to ask whether we've actually got funding in place for them. Just asking whether we've got funding in place to take these business cases forward.
Yeah, there's money set aside for upfront developments around Obiti and the Learning Town. Much of that money we haven't spent yet because really we were trying to be prudent with budget, and to some extent maybe one of the reasons we are where we are is that people for whom it's not their day job have been trying to develop and contribute to this process. What we do now have a programme manager and a project support in there, and there's money set aside, and we can commission pieces of work to make sure that you get these business plans completed. Claire, I don't know if you want to add to that. No.
Great.
Do we have a spare card for the other speakers over here? Technologies. A great thing. Councillor Diggle, did you want to come back?
The last point, do you envisage producing a scale model of what this learning town might look like in their business case?
We should probably wait until we get a card because it's being recorded and it'll not pick up the recording until we've got the card. Can't do spares, right? You're just going to have to play musical chairs, I'm afraid.
Apologies, sorry. What I'd propose to do is probably part of the full business case, which would follow after the outline business case, would look at the scale modelling, because that's a very expensive, detailed piece of work to do. But as part of the outline business case, I would like to see some images, because I appreciate people relate to these items, and we can use that in digital forms probably more effectively and efficiently in terms of use of public funds at this stage. So yes, there'll be visuals, but probably more in an electronic format.
Thank you. Councillor Witt.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask, with reference to the decision to amalgamate the two groups, as you alluded to on the page 8 of the papers, whether you decided to take that decision before or after the revised option 2 came forward, and if it was before that option came forward, would it have made any difference, given that now we have this revised option? Certainly it extends the time spell for consultation, because we cannot now move as quickly as we may have hoped to, because we have to consider the implications of the revised option, and we can't come to a decision quickly now. So that may have given you more time, and maybe you felt bounced into it because there was a time pressure. I hope there wasn't, because this has to be done properly. And my second thing, just a comment, there are examples of 3 to 15 schools in Scotland. They are in Orkney and Shetland, but they are there for geographical reasons, because you don't want to send 12-year-olds away to Kirkwall or Lerwick in midwinter and they can't get back for months because of the ferry. Now, whether you could get some by looking at how their schools work up there, whether we could draw any implications for Dumfries, I don't know. But that's another thing that has to be debated. Thank you.
Your first point, Councillor Witts, was when did we bring the two groups together? That was actually when Dougal and I just met, when we were asked to take on the chair of the two groups. And we just felt that with the continuity and learning from 3 to 18, that it made sense to bring the two groups together. And it was immediately agreed by the Staffing Models and Conditions of Services group. So that's the basis in which we went forward. We were also, with the numbers of members on the group, it gave a wide range of debate within the context of our remit. So it was straightforward. In terms of taking forward the 3 to 15 option, we were asked to submit an interim report from the group before Easter, which we duly did, and it was the Staffing Models and Conditions of Services group that asked us then to further explore the 3 to 15 option. We didn't feel particularly under a huge amount of pressure. We weren't creating a business plan, and we were sticking to a remit of learning and teaching, and the report that we've submitted as the final report to date is part of that process. So we can take it forward as you request.
Thank you very much.
Can I add just a little bit to that? And this might just give an indication of the independence of the group. One of the options that we were asked to consider, in fact it was Linda's group that was asked to consider, was the notion of middle schools, what were called intermediate schools. And our research across the UK showed that there was very, very little evidence to suggest that these were viable or indeed beneficial to the education of young people. So we went back to the other group and said, look, this isn't a runner. We don't like it. We don't think it's going to win anybody's hearts and minds, and it's certainly not going to benefit youngsters. So what we had said was that there were probably other models that might be worth looking at, and 3 to 15 was one of the ones that we suggested was looking at, and that was something within our group that we thought, well, we could find out more about these and just see if there's something to be explored in that. And that was what we were then asked to develop further.
Thank you very much. Councillor Witts.
Yeah, you'll be aware, of course, that in England the number of middle schools has crashed from thousands in the 80s to hundreds now, and Northumberland's just about ready to give them up. It's the only money that's... but I understand it from them that it's because the key stage, the new key stage curriculum doesn't fit so well with middle school. I don't know how relevant that is.
That's absolutely correct. That's exactly what we found. The one thing that did emerge from the examination of middle schools was that transition at a later point seemed to be less bumpy for most children.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
Just to follow up, I think it was from Councillor McComb, about the rural primary schools that feed in to not the high school, but the secondary schools in Dumfries. How do we manage that? Because they still go to primary school. We'll have that. Wrong. And the other thing was, I've just, we've done a lot of consultation, and I see that you've done a certain amount in here with current pupils, but not an awful lot, I don't think. We don't hear an awful lot about what they feel about the process. They're the ones that won't be in this, well, the primary ones might be, but see, you use the youth strategy executive group, they certainly won't be. But I just feel that perhaps, they're going to be asked to vote in the referendum next year, so they should be, I think, given slightly more freedom, perhaps, than they're getting at the moment. It would be very interesting to see how they view the way it is and the way it could be.
Chair, thanks. We've probably done more with the kids than you know about, to be honest with you, and Claire Renton could maybe give you a wee bit of background to some of that consultation. That will be part of what's published in due course. But I fully agree that we need to do more, far more than we've done. But we haven't ignored the children.
Completely agree with your point in terms of the way forward and embedding the student voice, and that will be really detailed plan as part of the outline business cases. Students have been involved in terms of encouraging teachers to exercise quite innovative exercises, especially in primary school, about really engaging with children through body maps, through traffic light systems, about what they want, what they feel about their existing environment, because we appreciate this project, whatever form it is, will a number of years down the line, but they're trying to engage the children that they have got now to create the future generation, and they are the best experts. And what we're finding is a very sensible voice there, because I know some people are concerned, and we've engaged in this process through Deliberations, and the feedback we're getting is very worthwhile and very structured and incredibly mature. So we are learning lessons through Deliberations. We're going to incorporate that into this learning town. We've had our Director of Education out speaking to the parent councils, pupil councils, to acknowledge their voice and to get feedback about how they're going to engage going forward, and creating more creative environments such as the postcards, really engage their brains on a level that they understand and communicate with. So it's been very enlightening and very positive to date, but we fully see that as a forward, and we're discussing options about how we do that, because I would like to see the student voice at our project team meeting. I also want to make sure that we're engaging every opportunity for children both to inform the new environments of the project, but I'll also want you to see, when we bring back the outline business cases, I want to see how the children are benefit from this process as well, because we will be using our own expertise, but a wealth of expertise in terms of engaging their future career options and really bringing alive the project environment that the schools are offering. So very much agree with your point. I think we've done quite a bit so far, but I want to do more going forward.
It was really on the first question about the small rural schools, and I'll defer, I think, to the chairs to some extent on this, in terms of what they might have been envisaging. My reading of the paper was that there would be an expectation that through some practical means, we would be developing institutions, organisations, and indeed in due course buildings or building campuses that would mean that all of the kids in all 31 current schools benefited from that. I'm assuming that's the intention. Clearly it's not, the learning and teaching group don't have the facility to say how you would actually physically do that, and that would need to be part of the business case, but maybe I could ask the chairs just to confirm that they expected everyone to be involved.
Yes, Colin, I would agree. It's possibly not within our remit to look at the school estate and how that could physically be managed, and that would form part, I would assume, of the business plan as well, and looking at best use of our buildings to facilitate a 3 to 15 campus.
That doesn't really answer my question, because we've got village schools, and how are they going to be involved in this? I assume.
I would imagine it depends where the boundaries are drawn for the catchment areas, and it may be rezoning. That wasn't part of our remit to look at that, but obviously that would be part of the business plan, taking it forward to look at what would be the best groupings of existing schools.
Chair, if I can add to that, clearly what we would anticipate, and this again relates to the independence of the report, we're still digesting, our school estate team ourselves are still digesting the implications of the report. Meaningful consultation, I think, means that things change and develop, and thinking has moved on. Perhaps the detail hasn't fully. Thinking has certainly moved on since the working group has looked at learning and teaching issues. What we need to be able to come forward to you with in December is a piece of work for both option 1 and 2 that demonstrates what you would actually do about buildings and how you would bring about the learning and teaching that you want. And we might have to be quite practical about that over a time period. And it may be that we're saying, and I really don't know just now, But we may well be saying that, yeah, there are groupings of buildings that we could pull together or that are quite close to each other that could represent a 3 to 15 campus. There may be some very small rural schools where that's too difficult, and it may be a different arrangement for them. Those are the sort of practicalities that have to come through. What's clear in here is that it's envisaged, if you look at option 2, it is envisaged that the kids across the borough would be in 3 to 15 campuses. And in option 1, it's clearly envisaged that it would be very, very close working between schools at primary, secondary and across secondary. And there has to be a building and a state manifestation of that we will come forward with.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor McClung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just really in a follow-up to Councillor Gilroy's regarding the children. There's obviously been a survey of EIS, the Dumfries Borough Secondary School teachers. Are we going to, if we accept this motion, are we going to ensure that all teachers, including primary teachers, because they are going to be affected by this as well, will be involved in any surveys that take place in the future?
Claire? We really do need extra cards. Order extra cards.
Sorry. Yes, I hear your point, and we need to make sure the student voice, the student staff voice is represented in its entirety going forward. So I agree with your point.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dempster, I think you wanted to come in on the back of Councillor Gilroy's point.
I did, Chair, thanks. And it's interesting to know that, or to hear one of the officers saying we need to consider rezoning, because there was an argument of rezoning just at the last Education Committee meeting. But I still, and hopefully it'll come forward in the report, but it's still, the question Councillor Gilroy hasn't been answered. And if you take an example that was, and I don't want to debate it today, I just use it simply for illustration purposes, Duncow, how do you deal with the 3 to 5? Are you saying you're going to shut them schools at 3 to 15 and bring the schools in earlier? Are you going to create new schools and take kids from a number of schools and put them in a single school? That will cause a huge problem, and I think you've wrong-footed the two chairs today, because we're now debating out with the Dumfries Borough and implications. They've never been asked to look at that. And I don't think even Jim McComb's point was answered. If we are serious that the best way to ensure children get a very good first-class education, smooth transition, is in a 3 to 15 single school, we have to do that region-wide. We cannot simply do it in Dumfries and say to the rest of the children in Dumfries and Galloway, you're unlucky where you stay, you'll not get the quality education and easy transition that you could have, but life's like that. Well, no. We are a single authority with a single purpose, and every child within this authority should be entitled to access the same level of education, the same quality, and the same opportunities. And if the 3 to 15 is a system that is adopted, it has to be region-wide. We cannot pretend that Dumfries is different.
Thank you very much. I think just at this point, this is why this motion is necessary today, because we're still at the point where we're asking questions and we simply don't have answers to them. And, you know, I mean, this is the absolute point of the motion. From my perception of option 2 revised, it says that it's creating a number. In my sort of understanding of that, I assumed that it wouldn't mean every primary school that's involved within the Dumfries secondary catchment areas. We have parental choice as well, which is another issue. So I think that has to be developed further as we've requested. And we need to look at how that is going to work in practicality, because it can't, in theory, involve every school that is a catchment primary of the Dumfries secondary school. Not easily, as you say, without closing schools, which we are not doing. So I think it's really important that we progress this and get all of these out. Colin, did you want to come in on a technical point?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think we should discount anything. That's the point. That's the point of the next phase of this. The critical issue, and I agree with Councillor Dempster, is what is the very, very best that we can do for kids in Dumfries and therefore Dumfries and Galloway. However, I think it's important to make this point. The issue that Dougal brought up was about smoother transition between primary and secondary. In the context of option 2, that might be 3 to 15 and then something different for a senior phase because it's in Dumfries and because of the numbers that you've got and because of the current number of secondary schools. But the smoother transition issue is being currently tackled bit by bit right across Dumfries and Galloway. We've got agreement that at Moffat is already an all-through school and is now going to join in management terms with BTUC. We've got agreement that Langham, New Primary, is now going to be part of Langham Secondary as an all-through arrangement linked to Canonby. And that's for the same reasons that we're actually trying to get all-through arrangements, primary staff and secondary staff working together in the local context. But the context can be slightly different sometimes. If you look right across Dumfries and Galloway, most secondary schools, not all, but most secondary schools are very close to at least one other primary school. And this gradual development of closer linkage and closer working to get the very best for everyone is partly what we're about. So I understand your point, but it has to be within the context of what's possible in each of the localities. And the detail about how you would do this in Dumfries is what needs to be now emerged. We've only received a learning and teaching report 2 weeks ago. And therefore, we need to work this through about how you could in practice develop this idea.
Thanks, you very briefly. I appreciate that. I know it works in Stanker because I know the schools work together and they work closely together, and it's a success. And kids do have a better transition now than they had years ago. But the point I was making, I'm sure it's well made anyway, that not only is there a Dumfries issue now, you've got peripheral issues that need to be reflected within the report as well, because there is an impact on far more schools than those within what was described, although it's not in the paper now, Dumfries Borough, it just says Dumfries Town now, which was absolutely fine. I was just making the point that all these things need to be addressed and be made very clear, because there will be a ripple effect well beyond what we describe as Dumfries Borough.
Well, I mean, I think that's the whole purpose of this debate, and I think we're really getting somewhere, because that's something that we can add to the list of things to include within the outline. Maybe give me a form of words for a change. I have Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Chair. This transition from P7 to S1 is very, very important. Thinking of my own experience when it was traumatic, to put it lightly. I went from Gatehouse Primary School, as it was a junior secondary in those days. I went from there to Kirkcudbright Academy, and from being a largest fish in a big pond, I was all of a sudden a very small fish in a great big pond. And it was a traumatic experience. There are those who would say I've been traumatised ever since, but that's another matter. We've got, in those days, there was, and I'm going to take the Stuartry as an example, there was one senior secondary school at Kirkcudbright Academy, and you had four other junior secondary schools who went to 15-year-old. You had Gatehouse, Dalry, Castle Douglas and Dalbeatty. We moved away from that over the years, and we now have 3 senior secondary schools in Stuartry. And I think we've got to look at the reasons why we moved away from that model, because one of our options is to reinvent that model. And I'm just wondering why we're thinking of moving away from that model to the old model.
Well, you wouldn't be reinventing that model, because the school itself would be dedicated to senior youngsters of all abilities and all interests. I think the difference with the junior secondary and the senior secondary model was that the senior secondary had right the way through it at S1, right the way up. So you were adding to a school that was already in existence. The school that I think is envisaged in option 2 is being created for the purpose for all youngsters, for a particular age group coming from the borough. So there would be no junior history in that school. It would not be identified as being particularly for Kirkcudbright or for any other place which had been the old centre of senior secondary education.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Lever.
Yeah, I think it's fairly obvious from the debate that we aren't actually sure what a 3 to 15 campus and what the transition would involve. I mean, I assume it's not 15-year-olds sat at the wee desks in the same way as they do at the moment, so there must be some sort of gradual transition within that. So we do need to have a lot more information in terms of that. And in some instances, obviously we were talking about sort of physical campuses, and the other ones are virtual campuses. But to go to all physical campuses, it's going to cost an awful lot of money in a long time. And now we know the technology is improving all the time, so the virtual campus becomes much more of an option in the future. But as being said, you know, we've got quite large secondary schools next to large primary schools. So you can see that you know, you could facilitate a transition within that campus, because it is a physical campus. But equally, we've got relatively small primary schools, rural schools, where the average 15-year-old wouldn't want to be there for the first 12 years of their education. So we do need to have a great deal more information on that. In terms of option one, I think we are getting better handling this P7 to S1 transition at the moment. So I think that's something else which we need to know. How can we actually facilitate and improve that if we do go down the option one, so we don't have this drop off? Because not every youngster drops off when they move from primary school to secondary school. Some actually thrive because it's a totally different environment. You know, they're not dealing with a very small core of pupils and a very small core of staff, 1 or 2 staff. They're actually dealing with quite a number of staff, so they may not go on with the teachers in the school who are dealing with in primary school, but do find it much easier, much better in terms of, if you like, their blossoming of their secondary education, because they are working with a larger number of pupils and staff. So I think that's something else which we need to look at, is the option one transition. If we go down that route, how can we actually improve that? Certainly, I don't understand the 3 to 15 transition-free idea at all. So I would like to have a lot more on that.
I think that's good points well made. And I know I've had my experiences with my own children have been very mixed, the transition from P7 to S1, and I suspect one of the few would certainly have benefited from the P15 agenda more. But as you say, we need more detail around that. Do you have anything to add?
Just simply, I think we're much, much better at the socialisation aspects of the transition, and that youngsters many more youngsters are comfortable at the move. But I think in terms of academic progress, you know, and the interruption to learning, you know, that happens there, I think there's evidence that we uncovered that really suggests that while the socialisation has improved significantly, academic progress is still interrupted more than it should be.
Thank you for that. Councillor McCone?
Thank you, Chair. Talking about transition, there is a statement in the conclusion to the report that a transition at the end of S3 is less likely to disrupt progression. Now, to my mind, there is no guarantee that that is the case, because that transition will be taking place at the start of the very year in which national examinations are held. So I don't know what the evidence is that that would be less likely to disrupt progression.
I'll bring Dougal back in.
Just simply, you know, the expert views that we took, and the research was suggesting that greater maturity and greater focus at age 15 meant that the transition was smoother. But, you know, there are no guarantees in this. And what we would need to do is to ensure that there was very close working between the 3 to 15 institution and the senior phase school to make sure that there was already engagement between the two before a youngster made the move, and that the youngster was very clear that what they were going to the senior phase school was a natural progression, and that they were going to get a better deal, and that we're going to be taken along the path that they wanted to travel. So it's, you know, again, it's the quality of what we're able to create, whether it's option one in the recreation or renovation of what we're doing, or whether it's a more innovative model in option two, where we would be working from, you know, from on a blank sheet. But it's the quality of the delivery in each of those that's the key.
Yeah, I mean, underlying a lot of the comments that have been made is the quality of the provision of support for pupils, both in their personal, curricular and vocational lives. And I think we've got to get that absolutely right in both the 3 to 4, 15 and in the senior school. It'll mean a different type of support, but it's got to be high quality. And I'm just wondering whether that possibly could be added to the bullet point.
Yeah, it's on a different theme, but as this next phase of the process goes ahead, and the nearer we get to a position where we have to make a decision, or, you know, one way or the other, I think it is essential that we have, I think Peter Diggle actually alluded to this earlier on, we should have a plan of the proposals for both the option 2 and what effect that would have on the existing schools in Dumfries. We should have a site or sites picked for any proposals that come forward, and ideally a model so that people have something tangible to look at, something tangible to sort of study and think, well, that, I can see how that might work or might not work. Because there is a case in the South Machars 6, 8, 10 years ago when they went with a concept with no plan, no site picked, and no model, and it just got blown completely out of the water. So if parents have got something to look at, it would make a big difference to them. It might help them make their decisions in time to come. Because there will be, no matter what option we have, there will be changes to the estate, and that is important that people see and know what those changes might incur, what the ramifications would be in the years to come.
I have Mr. Burrow and then Councillor Dempster.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of observations about transition, particularly the concept of a transition in the middle of the secondary years, as would be envisaged in option 2, which is something that is of particularly great concern to a lot of secondary teachers in Dumfries. I think everybody really needs to bear in mind that at the moment we're engaged in a gigantic national experiment in education called Curriculum for Excellence. And at the moment, because it's an uncontrolled experiment, we have to do, the whole country has to do it, we can't have it in part of the country, we don't really know exactly how it's going to work out. We particularly don't know exactly how the nature of certification within the secondary years is going to work out in practice. And because of that, I would feel very cautious, and certainly a great number of teachers that I speak, secondary teachers, would feel very cautious about the concept of building a school estate that was essentially an experimental design for a school estate in Scotland based on a curricular delivery model that itself has only just started and we're already many years for a proper evaluation of.
It's a very fair point, but I think that the structure of junior and senior phases, no matter what the content, if it ends up being, I think is probably going to be established as one that is viable and valuable.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Dempster and then Reverend.
Thanks, Chair. Playing devil's advocate or an interest of fairness, if you're going to provide a model of this new super school, in conjunction with that, you should be providing a model of or design of what you would do with existing schools if that fails, and allied to that, the amount of money you're going to spend potentially on each school to refurbish it, so that people, because we're not salespersons, if we're having a design for one, a design for the other, so that there's a fair and equal balance. And the other thing is, and it's about finance, and I'm sure it'll come out in the report anyway, but my school's still waiting for DDA compliance to be fixed. I keep asking for the 3G pitch. I don't want to get into a situation where all the money in Dumfries and Galloway is earmarked for a single school and every other school in the region is neglected, for want of a better word, because of that. There has to be, again, an assurance that there will be investment in the remainder of the school estate when we have finished or completed this particular exercise. And that will come through, I'm sure, in the reports we're getting in the forthcoming months.
I'll bring the director in. I think my view on that is that actually we've ignored Dumfries up till now. We have invested very heavily in the rest of the region, in Lockerbie, Moffat, Wallace Hall, right across the Eastern Rara to Annan. And I think that because we've not made any decisions in relation to what we do with future education in Dumfries, Dumfries has actually been, in this particular instance, the poor cousin. And I know there are issues in individual schools, but I do think that this is actually a slight balancing up, and I don't suspect that it would be to the detriment of other schools across the region. covering the direction on the other point.
Before he does, I've just got to say, there's no way I'm saying we shouldn't invest in Dumfries. That's not what I'm saying. I've been here since 1999. I've been when we complained bitterly about the state of Dumfries Academy and what we're doing with it. And there's always been an intention to do something in Dumfries. It's just taken an extensive period of time. So no, I'm not saying don't invest in Dumfries, and I never say that. All I'm saying is we have other issues to deal with as well.
Appreciated, Director.
Chair, it was just to add, Councillor Dempster's asking about making sure that whatever we do with option 2 business case, we do with option 1. And I think it's clear from the learning and teaching report that every effort was made to shape both options, the report on both options in the same way. And I think that's something we would learn from and try to do exactly the same for option 1 and 2 and how the business case is put together.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. Reverend McFadden.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that up till now that the Catholic community has been consulted about denominational provision with any future changes to the way in which the schools are in the town. I think it's a very important aspect from my point of view that diversity is celebrated, and there's so much comes out in the report that diversity is a good thing. Religious diversity is a good thing as well, and many parents opt for denominational education within the borough itself. So to safeguard denominational education is part of where we are as well, and to support that, to give the parents that opportunity. So I welcome the opportunity for ongoing consultation with the director and with those who are involved. The Catholic community wants to recognise that it's an important option which is there. Also, looking through the reports, we don't want to make all schools the same, because schools have got to be different. And a Catholic or a denominational school has got to be different. And so that difference has got to be celebrated as well somehow.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, to return to transition. Under the present arrangements, pupils have 3 years to come to terms with the transition before they embark on examination work. With the proposals in option 2, you would go straight into examination work the year you make the transition.
Yeah, I think that's been appreciated. Dougal.
Again, I would just say that it would be the quality of the preparation, and there would be no teacher in the 3 to 15 school, particularly working in the senior years of that school, who wouldn't be having a mind on what was coming next and making sure that the youngsters were properly prepared for that.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Lever.
Yeah, I fully appreciate what Parliament Patton's saying about the Catholic aspect, and it's also the ethos, which I think a lot of people go to St. Joe's for. So I think that's something which you need to explore in much greater detail rather than making assumptions either one way or the other. Because what I would like to see is to have is option 2, version 2, version 1 effectively, or version 2. That can't be accommodated. But I'd also like to have more information on the commitment of the universities, the higher education and further education, in terms of their buy-in to that, because I think it's mentioned somewhere that any incorporation for further education might require the colleges to actually invest themselves into this project. Now, I appreciate where we are financially as a country, and the further education budget's really been hammered this year, and I don't know what the projections are for it next year. So it's okay. It's all very well for them to say, well, yeah, in theory we would like to do that, but at the end of the day, will they have the resources to commit to actually doing that? Because what we can't do is have this loose thread hanging where they can't actually find the resources to complement what's being put in from the education budget or the council budget in terms of that. So I do think we need to have all these loose ends tied up fully in terms of the business case, and also the buy-in of businesses in terms of whichever route we go down. I mean, lots been made about the vocational training, but I think in terms of the vocation, whether we go down option 1 or option 2, that is a very, very important part, and one doesn't exclude the other. Because it says in here that option 1 was never none of these were ever the status quo. But I think until January, option 1 was being referred to as the status quo, which it can't be. We realise that education has to change. So, we need to bear that in mind as well. We need to have the buy-in of businesses, further education, higher education, faith groups, etc. We can't have these hanging loose.
I would agree entirely with that, and I think I have put a line in somewhere about options available with key partners, college, university, and employers, and I think that's absolutely essential. I actually had a very brief conversation with David Clark recently, and again, it's around how things would progress, because we just don't have the detail. I think they're very, very important point. Do you want to come back?
Come back. It's a minor point, but it was actually raised at Heath Hall Community Council, whereby from the university's point of view, would they actually, from the students attending the university point of view, would they actually see it beneficial having younger people actually on the campus as well? Because they've gone through a phase themselves, coming from all over the country, into moving into higher education. Would they actually appreciate that? Is that going to be the detriment in terms of the universities on the Crichton complex at the moment?
I very welcome you raising this point, because that's where my background's from the college and university sector, working with the Scottish Further and Higher Education Funding Council, in particular within the development of the college and university facility. So I've got a lot of thoughts and ideas about how we potentially take that forward and make sure it is because it is a key item in terms of managing that onward transition for our young people, they have a positive information. I think it's very important. I did a lot of work under that role, creating 16-year-olds to much greater age in terms of, I know universities have got some reservations about young people dealing with doctorate or more research items, and there's a lot of good information, particularly around the learning wing at Dumfries College, where HE and FE students together. I'm working about ways of managing that. We've got to be respectful that it's different environments for different stages of learning. We also have demonstrated through that work the added benefits that, youngsters whose doctorate students being taught or actually teaching engaged and encouraged to stay longer because they are inspired by what is possible. So I think there's a lot of potential.
But the point I'm making, it has to be both ways as well.
Yeah, I hear you. It's like every partnership, it's both parties have got to benefit out of it and be brought to the table to bring their concerns, but also the benefits and their hopes.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholl?
Yeah, it's just a question on the sort of older 15 to 18, but have we had any talks with, or have we any intentions of talking with the Chamber of Commerce or the Federation of Small Businesses or any other business organisations that are out there? Because I think it's important that if you're going to sort of have apprenticeship type things running through the system, that you open up talks with them to make sure that they're on side to do this.
Yeah, that's certainly the intention. There's from a council point of view, the chief execs look to set up a strategic oversight partnership, which is really, mainly directors, but trying to make sure that we see that every major project that's involved in Dumfries and Galloway complements each other rather than goes in the wrong direction. And there's certainly been a thought that we would invite onto that group or one or two representatives from local business. That's certainly the intention. The difficulty has been so far is that it's a bit difficult to invite people on when we're not absolutely clear about the future direction, and it's difficult to pinpoint what you're then discussing. So as this business case issue moves forward, that's the very time to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Witts?
Thank you. I just wondered if during the course of our deliberations we had ever considered casting the net wider for exemplars of successful transitions. I'm not suggesting that we should send you all to Helsinki at this time of year. I'm sure it's very nice in June, but that is an example, that's a clear example of a country that's turned its system around. They had poor health, poor education, and it's been a resounding success in the world leaders now. Can we compare, again, is that a question, can we compare, draw useful comparisons? Have we considered that?
You'll see from our list of sources consulted that we went to the most recent international reports on the most successful education systems across the world. And while Finland is an example that Scotland has lent heavily on in recent months and years, there are certainly others elsewhere that are worth looking at, and we've started doing that. But Obviously, if you would like us to go and visit those, we have a short list. And maybe we should have some advisors coming with us so that you see for yourselves exactly what's happening elsewhere.
I suspect Councillor Witt's probably wanted to go.
I have to quickly get in there before the Standard says that I'm offering you a free trip to Finland. That would look very bad in press. No, perhaps we could do a media conferencing or something. I'm sure our reading the reports might be sufficient. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
I think it's probably as well to put on the record that I haven't actually got a passport, just so that we don't end up... no, not at all. How did you know? We are being recorded, aren't we? That's unfortunate. Okay. One of the things that I just want to go back to in the report, it was under additional considerations where we're talking about the Crichton campus, where you said, is the Crichton campus the best site for the senior phase school? And if not, are there other sites or parts of the town, etc., etc.? I mean, I was intrigued by that and just wondered if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Part of any robust public have rigorous procedures. One of those is just the options. So I wouldn't want to predicate what that would include. But as a first stance, to identify all. Firstly, we need to identify what the project is in terms of parameter size. But then we need to identify all available site options and have that test against that. So any sites or potential sites on the here need to be reviewed against project requirements, and that will form part of the outline business case which we presented back to you. And we'll clearly see what would the preferred site option be, but demonstrate why that has become the preferred site option. So we want to bring any decision.
Excellent, thank you very much. Would you like to come in as well?
Somebody who doesn't know Dumfries borough terribly well, and I think Linda also, has lived in the borough, but we've done a bit of driving around, looking at maps and so on, and we wondered if there were other sites that might be usable or preferable or advantageous in a different way in terms of siting or even regeneration.
Good, so the options are very, very open. I think, again, we need that reassurance that it is within the motion's recommendations that we review all available. That reassurance is helpful. I, at this stage, have no more members wishing to speak. Anybody else? Oh, Councillor Lever.
Well, just to, I think it's been a very useful discussion. Reflects what we don't know as well as what we do know. But I think what we need to make clear is that the outline business case that's detailed here, it's not an exhaustive list, and that other groups will be allowed to feed into this. So make sure that the parent councils, staff, etc., all know, even if they can't attend the meeting on Monday, that they have this opportunity to feed into this. Make sure that we go forward in terms of developing these programs with as much information as possible as what people are looking for. Do go about it in a proper, open-minded fashion, so at the end of the day we do have an equal business case for both options, and we're not being led down the route of either one of those, because it is the important thing is the education of the children within Dumfries borough. That's what this should all be about.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Actually, I've done one question, I think. On page 13 at bullet point 2.2, it says opportunity to break down social boundaries by possible relocation and parity of provision. I don't clearly understand what that sentence means. I'm just wondering if you could give me a bit more detail around it. We have concerns about the social boundaries.
Yeah, I think what we had, and it maybe refers back to Councillor Nicholl's point, we had people on our group who had come through the education system in Dumfries historically, and who felt when they moved from one school to another, they felt that they were an inferior citizen because of where they'd moved from and where they'd moved to. And we felt that there was opportunity in here somewhere to remove such prejudices or preconceptions which depended on where you went or where you lived. Simple as that.
Councillor McKee?
Just on that same matter, Chair, it's something that bugs me quite a bit actually. And unfortunately, it happened 2 or 3 weeks ago with my granddaughter and her pal, where her pal wanted to go, they wanted to go to George V Play Park. Pal wanted to go over Blue Street Bridge. My granddaughter says, no, we'll go over the footbridge into Stakeford. Her pal says, oh, I'm not going that way, we'll get beaten up. Now, fair enough, you can laugh, but it's a damn serious matter when kids are thinking that way, and it's how we change it. Where 2 or 3 years ago, we were at a function at the police station, there was 2 youngsters there and they were talking, and we mentioned Lochside, and they criticised Lochside. I said, have you ever been there? No. One of them had driven through when she was learning to drive. And that's what we've got to address, and it's a serious matter. There's no 2 ways about it. And unfortunately, there's people within the council that have that attitude as well, and we need to address it. It's sad that it's affecting a senior secondary school in that way.
No, I would agree entirely with that. It's perception, isn't it?
Absolutely. I just don't know how we address it. The other, what I would like to ask is, he didn't seem to want vocational training from S1 onwards. Could you maybe look at that when you're doing the business case, see what the additional cost would be if he started at S1 as against starting at S4?
I think we would be looking to try and engage youngsters and what I think we have traditionally termed vocational education from pretty early stages in primary school, not just from S1. The difficulty, of course, is to do with facilities and accessing the right kind of facilities, and also enabling youngsters at an early age to go out into the workplace because of obviously all the risk assessments and health and safety arrangements that need to be put in place for that. But certainly in terms of getting youngsters more aware of vocational opportunities and the skills that they should be building alongside their academic learning, that's something that's in there from earliest possible times. And that, I think, to be fair, is enshrined in curriculum for excellence.
Councillor Weaver, sorry, Councillor McKee, did you want to come back in? Councillor Weaver.
Yeah, I fully agree with Councillor McKee. Whichever route we're going to go down, we have to break down these barriers within a small town like Dumfries. That one area is totally against the other, which is not acceptable nowadays. We do need to work hard on that. And just something which I've noted, bring up, I think what we also need to have is further discussions with the Scottish Government in terms of what the funding options are to go down this, because we shouldn't be driven down the idea that in one instance we're going to get 17 million from the Scottish Government, the other week getting nothing at all. We need to reopen that dialogue as well. I mean, this is a local decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And whereas at the various sessions that we had out in the different communities and in the schools, we talked about the fact that if we didn't go down this route, we would need to look and go back to the government and see what was possible. We talked before about what the criteria for bids was, and at that time, you could have bid for Dumfries Academy, for example. I've spoken about that before. But because option 1 now that we've seen this report is clearly not radical, but certainly brings about quite a lot of envisage quite a lot of change, then I think as part of the business case we need to talk to the government to say what would they be prepared to fund that would still meet the appropriate criteria. And therefore I think that's got to be a discussion that comes through with them, and we won't leave that now because it's not about saying we're not doing the senior school or otherwise. It's actually saying what funding would there be for option 1 and how we could.
Thank you, Chair. I feel as if you're going to be summing up now, and I think again I'd like to thank you for bringing this to us and giving us information. Earlier on there was talk about barriers, and these are barriers of a lot of our own making in the council here, because I mean, let's not kid ourselves on here. It's here, and the changes here are because we have failed. We failed in the consultation, we failed communication, educational case and the business case, as well as staff. So whether I know you see the director shaking his head there, but this is about confidence out there as well. This is about people that have genuine grievances that have not been answered. They have not been answered, and for whatever reason, they don't feel as if they have been taken on board with this. So there is a confidence issue, and try to sweep it under the carpet is not something we should, not a route we should go down. We should be, there is a perception out there that all this has been trying to bulldoze through, and I understand that perception that people have got. And openness, transparency, better consultation, giving proper answers to questions, that genuine concerns out there is paramount as we go forward for the best education of our pupils now and future pupils.
I would agree, and I would thank yourselves for actually engaging as positively as you have today, and I think it's absolutely imperative that we move forward on a really strong positive footing. I think from my perception of the consultation to date, I'm aware that most questions have been answered, but the problem again has been some of the questions we simply didn't have answers for. I don't think the officers had answers. I certainly didn't have answers when I was asked, because we don't have the detail of the business plan. And maybe in hindsight, we should have gone to the business plan option earlier. We're always wiser in hindsight, but we are where we are today. We've got a lot of information from parent bodies, teachers, pupils. We've got a really good springbox to jump from now, and I think that we really just have to shoot this forward in a very positive fashion. With that, we've had a couple of additions. I'm minded, as you say, to begin to wrap things up as such. We have had a couple of things that we would like to insert within the outline business case list. Certainly there was a quality of support which was raised by Mr McQuiston, and the impact on schools out with Dumfries, if we're happy to add those into the list as well. But as I say, this list is not the be-all and end-all. We will continue to feed into this if anything arises, and I think that we need to make that very, very clear at this stage. So are we happy to move to recommendation? Are we happy? I'm not going to read it out because you've all got it in front of you and it's really long. Or do I need to for the purpose of the recording? No, I don't. Are we happy to note 2.1? So agree to remove option 3 at 2.2. Agree 2.3 with those additional bullet points. Absolutely, and that it's completely open, yeah. Note 2.5. And we're not going to add it as a recommendation, but we did want to ensure that parent council representatives are contacted before the seminar on Monday, in case they're not available. And we'll assure that that's Thank you very much, members, and thank you very much to the various people who have come to speak to this. I think that's been a really constructive debate, and I really thank you all for it.